as the world tries to contain the contagious Delta variant of coronavirus, a new variant has found its way into our daily vocabulary. The Omicron variant. From Southern Africa, Europe, America to Asia, countries are now starting to report cases of this new, more transmissible variant. But it's very important to separate the facts from the hysteria. Welcome to WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma, and on this special broadcast of the WION-VOA Co-Production, we will look at what different nations are now doing to curb cases, and we'll focus on the US President's plan of action. So let's get started. Now, amid growing concerns over the new Omicron COVID-19 variant, the Biden administration is supporting efforts by the World Health Organization to establish a new international agreement on future pandemic preparedness and response, known as a pandemic treaty. But as Voice of America's White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara reports, public health experts are pessimistic of the outcome. Take a look.
At least 55 countries have implemented travel restrictions aimed at delaying the outbreak of the Omicron COVID-19 variant.
Confirmed cases as of yesterday was 205 in 18 countries, and just this morning, that's gone up to 226 in 20 countries. And I think you're going to expect to see those numbers change rapidly.
As countries scramble to ramp up vaccinations, the Biden administration is supporting efforts by the World Health Organization to establish a new international agreement on future pandemic preparedness and response, said White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki to VOA on board Air Force One Tuesday.
The United States is committed to working with member states to take forward the recent recommendations of the Working Group on Preparedness and Response. That includes developing a new WHO convention, agreement, or other international instrument, and making agreements to improve the effectiveness and agility of international health regulations.
The U.S. had initially opposed the inclusion of language that would have made the so-called pandemic treaty, proposed in March by about 24 world leaders, legally binding. The treaty is expected to be ready in May 2024.
Anything that comes out of this process is very unlikely to make any change to our current environment and the current pandemic response. We're looking at probably a 2 to 3 year process to get to a real treaty that may or may not actually then go into effect.
Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations say that a pandemic treaty should include a waiver of patents on vaccines, the so-called TRIPS waiver at the World Trade Organization.
Vaccinate the world! Free the vaccine!
After initially opposing the waiver, the U.S. announced its support of it in April, leaving the UK, Switzerland, and the European Union as holdouts. But many are skeptical that the Biden administration is putting any real diplomatic weight on the issue.
We do observe the lacking of more proactive leadership from the U.S. Since it's changed the position.
According to research by Duke University, almost 2 years into the pandemic, the world continues to struggle to enact an effective and equitable response. Commitments and pledges remain largely unfulfilled, including the goal of achieving 40% vaccination coverage in every country by the end of 2021 and 70% coverage by mid-2022. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
To speak about this further, we're now joined by Voice of America's correspondent Chris Casquejo from Washington. Chris, welcome to WION on this special broadcast. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden is promising Americans that he won't call for a widespread shutdown or a lockdown, especially of businesses and schools because of the new Omicron variant. So what is his plan to avoid a surge in cases?
Good morning from the White House. President Biden's plan involves expanding access to booster shots for one. In a speech on Thursday afternoon, Biden announced a program whereby Americans can find the nearest available dose by simply texting a number to get a shot immediately. He also outlined stricter COVID-19 testing restrictions for international travelers. The White House said that starting next week, all inbound travelers will be required to get a negative COVID-19 test within 1 day of their departure for the United States. That's a change from the current 3-day policy. The rule will apply to both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals. The mandate for wearing masks on public transportation and in airports was due to expire on January 18th. Now it will last until at least March. Another part of the administration's plan, make at-home COVID-19 testing kits free for those covered by private health insurance plans. Chief Medical Advisor to the Biden administration, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said there are 60 million people in the U.S. who are eligible to receive a COVID-19 vaccine but have chosen not to. He also said there is every reason to believe the rise in immune response provided by the booster shots will help prevent severe disease if someone is infected by this new Omicron variant.
Right, Chris, now just broadening our discussion a bit, the global vaccine equity, of course, remains a top concern for world leaders. Did President Biden announce any new plans to address this issue?
Yes, the Biden administration is pledging to deliver 200 million more vaccine doses abroad through COVAX. Now, that's the United Nations-backed partnership to deliver vaccines globally, and they hope to do this during the next 100 days. During his speech, Biden made a point of thanking South African leaders for their transparency about the Omicron variant. He said their immediate action allowed him and other world leaders to act quickly to help prevent its spread. Several nations, including the U.S., banned travelers from southern African countries. But the World Health Organization declared that such travel bans will not prevent global spread of the new variant, but will instead place a heavy burden on lives and livelihoods.
Right, Chris, thank you so much for those inputs. Stay with us on this special broadcast. We'll come back to you for another story. Let's move on now. The supply chain issues continue to delay imports from Asia at the worst time for U.S. consumers, especially during the busy holiday shopping season. And those delays are now mirrored for exporters shipping goods to Asia as well. Voice of America brings us this next detailed report about the crisis. Have a look.
The Port of Long Beach and Port of Los Angeles are the two largest container ports in the United States. Supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19 and rebounding consumer demand mean there are more goods coming into the U.S. than this port can handle. Even operating close to 24/7, there are sometimes more than 70 ships at anchor waiting to be unloaded.
It's a global supply chain crisis. Containers, loaded imports that have been at the terminals 9 days or longer. We have a real capacity issue. It's not just a carrier issue. It's an issue involving all stakeholders, the truckers, the warehouses, port authorities, of course, and marine terminal operators.
The port's problems ripple far inland to California farms that ship products to Asian consumers.
Once we fell behind on the port, then it's all been a snowball effect.
Jasmine Vineyards grows 12 varieties of table grapes, one of the state's top agricultural exports. Of the 10 biggest markets for California table grapes, 6 are in Asia. Before pandemic, Jasmine Vineyard shipped 300 to 350 grapefruit containers a year to Asia during July to October harvest. This year, the vineyard shipped less than 10% of that. For each container not shipped, the vineyard loses $45,000 in profits. Katsurayama figures that $15 to $20 million lost to pandemic-related logistics problems this year. Part of the challenge for exporters is meeting demand. Consumers shop online 24/7, but producers can't produce 24/7, and few links in the supply chain operate round the clock. Titi Chun for VOA News.
For more on this story, we still have VOA's correspondent Chris Casquejo live with us from Washington. Chris, thanks for staying on. Now, supply chain issues and rising energy prices are two factors that have contributed to rising U.S. inflation. So how is the situation as of now in the country, and how are businesses faring as of now?
Their condition is improving somewhat. President Biden met this week with CEOs and other leaders of major retailers virtually and in person at the White House. Retail giant Walmart has seen a 26% increase in shipping containers getting through U.S. ports in the past month, and that's according to its CEO. The president of Food Lion, which is a large grocery store chain throughout the U.S., told the meeting that the company's supply chain is strong and robust and that they have ample product inside their stores for customers to choose from during this holiday. The White House said other participants at the meeting this week, both virtual and in person, included the CEOs of Best Buy, Samsung North America, Qurate Retail Group, Toto Supermarket, Etsy, Mattel, CVS Health, and Kroger.
Chris, my final question for you. These supply chain issues are having a major ripple effect on charitable organizations in America as well. So what can you tell us about these charities? How are they operating? And these charities essentially give holiday gifts to children in need.
Yes, well, those supply chain issues are hitting them especially hard. Donations of new toys to the Toy Foundation have declined by nearly 80% in dollar value this year compared to 2019, pre-pandemic. This group was formed by a toy industry trade association to act as an industry-wide charitable collective for toy manufacturers. And the companies themselves are facing pressure to keep their profit margins in line with expectations. So industry experts say they might be more reluctant to donate the same number of toys as they did in years past. The higher costs due to supply chain issues are definitely being passed on to shoppers. Toys that are on store shelves now cost 23% more than they did last year. Industry leaders say small and mid-sized manufacturers who largely produce their toys in countries like China are feeling squeezed more by the supply chain problems than larger companies.
Chris, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thank you for joining us on this special broadcast on WION World is One.